Greetings. All right, so in our last video, or video number 2 of block scheduling and unit planning, we went over how we put together a unit, and we used our geometry unit that I was putting together as an example. So we covered all of the standards and objectives that we wanted to learn, went through how to find resources and material and how to put that plan together. So I showed you all the digital things that we use. I think the only thing that I left out was making sure, using your resources, sifting through your files, your digital files. So that's when you want to go to Dropbox. That's when you want to go to OneDrive or Google Drive and find out what resources do you have to help you with that unit so that you're not purchasing things that you do not need. From that point, again, I had told you I had already gathered all of my physical resources and decided what things that I would like to use that are going to help us to meet the objectives that we have listed and help my children to learn the standards that need to be addressed for geometry. And again, we were following the Common Core standards. So some of the things that we have, my children, they're very different in the way that they learn, and you want to take that into consideration when you're making those lesson plans and when you're picking material to use. I have 2 children in my home that are not very abstract learners. They are very concrete learners. They need to see, feel, manipulate things in order to grasp certain concepts, especially things like fractions and geometry. They're going to need to manipulate it. I have one child who does not need that at all. She is very, she can conceptualize things very well. So you have to kind of, again, know your learner. So for that one child, I can show her these things and she may choose to use them, but she does not necessarily need to. I know that, but I'll have them available. But I want to make sure that I have things available for that child that is that hands-on learner that needs to hold those things. So again, you're going to see a variety of things when I put together a unit, and that's just to meet the needs of the children in my home. So again, one of the books that I said I was going to use, what I did was to go ahead and, or let me go back, to put everything together. The first thing that I want after I've made that plan is, I think it's very important that we convey to our children what it is that we want for them to learn. To just put something together and say we're going to have a lesson today on this or lesson today on that is not really giving them that opportunity to understand exactly what your expectations are. So the first thing that I do is to always put together a checklist, and this helps us to stay on track. And this is the checklist for geometry. What I'll do is go ahead and put a link for this as well online so that you can see it, download exactly what one of my checklists will look like. So it has, standards, what the standards are, and I've put down, a list of things. So like the first one here is, it was a kindergarten standard to be able to resort objects using a variety of attributes such as shape, size, and position. And I put down the particular things that I wanted them to be able to define and identify according to that objective. And I've done that and gone through. This particular geometry one is going to be several pages long. So here I have the objectives that I need them to meet, and here is where we will go through and I will assess and talk with them and write down the dates and hold myself and hold them accountable for making sure we meet these objectives. Okay, so I've gone through and done that. And again, that's just for accountability purposes, and then to also be able to clearly explain to my children what we are supposed to be learning with this unit. So that's all taken care of. I've also gone ahead, because I have my list, my plan, I've made sure that we went ahead and printed what we'll be using. So one of the workbooks they'll be using is this geometry workbook. I typically, just a tip, take my little printable workbooks like this and put them in a binder. I put them in little page protectors, and the reason I do that is because it's easy for me to take it out. If my child needs to review, I can print a copy if I want to. But what I typically do is use a dry erase marker, because the children can just answer questions on there and I can look at it and it saves me from printing. So I do this a lot with workbooks, so that's something that works. But since this is something that I want to use for them to learn, this is going to be some lessons that we cover and things that I'll be adding to their portfolio. For these children, I did go ahead and print the hard copies. So everything that we will be using, all of our little worksheets have already been printed. So I don't need to worry about that on Saturday or Sunday. There's nothing for me to print. It's all here. We use interactive notebooks. This is their calendar time. Also, that's a different video. But since we use interactive notebooking as a teaching tool, I have gone ahead and printed everything that we will be using and adding to our interactive notebooks. And I actually went ahead and printed for the next 10 weeks, but I typically would just print for 5 weeks. So everything is here. So again, there's no printing or anything that I have to do once that's set up. So this is my child's notebook. I'm going to put this in her crate and everything is ready for her. So when it's time for math, we can sit down and only focus on math. There's no prep work that needs to be done or nothing to look for them. Hands-on tools. Once you start putting things together, especially if you like the Montessori, and we love the kind of Montessori types of things, even for middle school and some of them for high school, is great for vocabulary, and it's self-directed for them. What I've done in previous years, because this is not the first time I've done this, I have older children, so what I do is to print and laminate things, and I store them because it's easy to store these. I bought these little Tupperware things from Family Dollar. You know, they're colored. We don't put food in any colored plastic. So buying these, they were cheap. I think I paid $10 for boxes of these, and they come in different sizes. Some of them are circular, and these stack well on my shelves, so it makes it easy to find. So this is some Montessori printables that I've printed, cut, laminated, and it's on types of angles and parts of angles. This one is on sorting angles. And if you've never used Montessori, basically what you have is you're going to have a card that's going to have pictures of things. It is going to have a term at the bottom to explain. So these are corresponding angles. So these are the teaching cards, and what your child is going to do is find, after they go through the teaching cards, they'll find cards like this that have a picture, and this one is a right angle, and they would find the term. Of course, this doesn't match. This is an obtuse angle. So they would find this and put them together. So these are just self-directed learning things that the kids can use. I can build these into the lesson plan, but not all the time do you have to. These are things, you know, for those quick learners, or maybe you want someone to get started while you work with another child. These come in handy. They also come in handy for quick review in the evenings or practice and things that the children can do, and they don't need you to necessarily do it. So I put together these for parts of angles, types of lines, different types of triangles, regular polygons, and learning the difference between polygons, circumference, parts of a circle, and types of lines. We also use, I'm telling you all my goodies for geometry. We also use attribute blocks. So this is good for teaching children similar shapes, congruent shapes, and things of that nature. So these are good. Attribute blocks are really good for those types of lessons. Geo boards, hands-on stuff that you can use for geometry for those children who don't necessarily like paper and they don't necessarily understand abstract concepts. So we have different size geo boards that they can use to make shapes when you're teaching them the different attributes of the shapes. We have another one that's a favorite for us, Power Solids for geometry kit that we use, and it comes with a great workbook for middle school children. Goes through all of the different formulas and things for calculating the volume, surface area, and things of 3D shapes. Perfect. They'll be building some different models, building polyhedrons and things of that nature. So having toothpicks, and I wrote down on my list, you know, I need to go grocery shopping and grab marshmallows or those little gumdrops and things of that nature that they'll use. And something else to make it fun, I have my books already listed that I'll they're on hold. I'll go pick those up from the library. But this one is another one that's good for geometry. It's the Marvelous Ball book. And it basically tells them how to build different shapes using, tetrahedrons and things. So it has a cute little story. And then it goes into giving directions on how to take paper plates and build, geometric shapes. So things to just make it fun. So that pretty much wraps it up. So at this point, I have everything together. If you have a small space, and this is what I did in the past with a small space, because we have a very small home, I would take a milk crate. You can pick them up at Walmart or someplace for like $3 or $4. And at that point in time, whatever topic we were on, I would go ahead and put everything for that unit in a milk crate. What I've done just recently was to go ahead and spend a little bit of time and invest in a few more shelves and spaced everything out. So what I'm going to do is just to place all of these resources back on our geometry shelf, geometry and measurements. And I'm going to leave that there. So when it's time for lessons, because I have everything in a designated place, I don't need to pull it out. I can just pull the thing, what we're going to use for that day. So you're going to want to find a method that's going to work for you. Either, put everything together because you don't want to have to hunt and look for it. Go ahead and have everything printed for your child, put it in that notebook, and then you're ready to go basically. So I'm done with geometry. I'm going to spend the rest of the time setting up everything else. We do not always set up units like this independently. I will make a video on how I go through my children's textbooks. My older children are going to use Forrester Algebra 1. So I will make a video on how it is that I go and I pre-read up on what they're going to be covering. And then I look for, whatever activities that I can use to supplement and make that learning real for them, and I'll do that in a separate video. But again, at this point, I'm ready to go. I'm done. I'm going to place this in my child's crate, and we're ready to learn next week. Thanks.